So one thing that I've ran into lately when trying to tell people some beneficial things I've found about effort, such as like David Goggins' style of effort and his, ideas about that, his teachings, you might even say. Um, when it comes to this effort, people have to realize when I'm explaining something about an extreme perspective, such as David Goggins' perspective, where he's talking about pushing yourself to your absolute limit, pushing yourself to your boundaries, all this kind of stuff. People can get the wrong idea. I spent a long time in the more relaxed type of spiritual perspective that you'd see, for example, in higher tiers of spiral dynamics. If we want to get really technical and talk about things that maybe not everyone in this who's going to watch this video is going to understand. When it comes to effort, you have to realize there are many different tiers of effort and many different ways of looking at effort. Ultimately, if you're on a spiritual path, it's my strong conviction that the completion of that path or a part of that path will eventually come to where you might spend a lot of time in this kind of free flowy state of maybe not doing much in normal success related activities like making money or getting possessions or having success with the opposite sex or anything like that, the opposite gender, whatever. You got to realize effort is itself something that we are fabricating with our own minds. Right now, as I speak, this talk is essentially happening on its own. And if you get to a certain point in your spiritual practice, this is going to become a living 24/7 every second of the day reality for you that your experience will live itself. Now, what can the character, the person, the avatar, the ego, the individual at the center of the experience, not really the center, but for sake of speaking to those possibly in an illusioned state at the time of listening to this video, I will say that. But anyway, the whole point of me talking about this is I want people to start to understand how effort is one of the most complex things you could ever look at. It's not as simple as there's no effort when you're awakened. It's not as simple as there is effort when you're unawakened. There's a whole spectrum of effort. And there's a spectrum of seeming self-illusory, perceptual, like sensory data that's going to come to you in your experience. These things are going to ebb and flow like waves. You're going to have times where the character might feel to be in very high effort, or the character might feel to be in absolutely no effort. There might be times when all this is occurring, but what I've found through my process of awakening is that eventually you're going to come to an end of this sort of really relaxed spiritual approach where you're trying to turn away from the world and turn inward. When you realize there's no such thing as inward and there's no such thing as world, things start to go the way they should have gone all along, in my opinion. The character gets to play the game that the character wants to play due to the very nature, causes, and conditions that seemingly make up the character, that are all mental fabrications that happen to and within the character. The character is going to create this backstory. I'm a white guy with this much money, and I live in this state or this country, and I want this or that thing, all these things, all, given to me by culture. The desires I have, partially given to me by culture. The things I like, partially given to me by culture. Maybe it's partially given by my nature as a human being. At like an evolutionary level. There are so many different things working as different conditions, or things that appear to be real conditions at play. You got to realize the level of appearance is the only level there is. There's what appears to be, and that's it. There's nothing outside of appearance. This is actually a really deep thing. Some people might think that they already understand what that means. Some people might think that that's incorrect and that that's not at all the case, and that there's this true reality or this ultimate reality or this ground of being or this ground of reality or the way that things actually are or absolute truth. If you think that any of those things are anything other than the appearance that's occurring right now, that contains past, that contains future, all of these projections, you're kind of missing the point. You're kind of missing the point. And I apologize that I happen to be, getting accosted by pussy at this time. But there's really not much I care to do to stop that, as most men probably would react the same. Anyway, so that got me a little sidetracked. The reason I'm making this video on effort and on identification of the self or the lack thereof, or it's effort or the lack thereof, identification or the lack thereof. There's a whole spectrum, and it's all going to be fluxing and changing and shifting. But there will come a point, if you awaken deep enough and you do this type of non-dual practice stuff long enough, that you're going to come into the way things should have been all along, so to speak, what I'll call it. You might call this the Tao. This is described in the Tao Te Ching. If you haven't listened to that or read that, I highly suggest it. There are very high quality audio versions of it for free on YouTube right now. I'll probably go ahead and post in the description of this video my favorite one. But I want you to realize that living a natural or a relaxed or a spiritual life has really nothing to do with what you're doing in success-related activities or not at the end point. Now, in the interim stage, when you're trying to get to your end point, and everybody's going to find a different one. The end point is never actually an end point. It's sort of like the end of a chapter, or the ceiling of a chapter, or the ceiling of a book where it's just complete. That part is set and in stone, it's done. You will get to that point. If you practice diligently and long enough and you have a bit of talent and, maybe some luck, you'll get there. And I'm really making this video for the type of people who have that decent chance of getting there, which might not be too many people, because the biggest limiting factor when it comes to spiritual awakening is really someone's desire and their interest. And from there, you can get into more minor things. It's really three: their desire, their interest in it, and their belief in how accessible it is. If someone believes that it's impossible to awaken or to get enlightened or to get fully awakened or fully enlightened, whatever those terms or words mean to the person at the time, because it means a different thing to every single person who's ever thought about it, and it means a different thing in every moment that you've ever thought about it. If you're honest with yourself and you do investigation into your direct experience, you'll notice that's how it works. At least that's what I'm claiming off of my direct experience. The idea is practice spirituality deeply and you're going to go far with it. If you don't practice spirituality deeply and believe that you can get to an end point, you most likely won't get there. I think one thing that helped me is that I had a pretty high degree of a sort of arrogance in my life, that I felt like ever since a very, very young child that I was worth a lot of fucking shit. And I could do a lot of fucking shit. And I could accomplish a lot of fucking shit. And at the end of the day, no matter what life threw at me, whether it was a bipolar disorder with bipolar disorder type 1 with psychotic features diagnosis when I was 18, or whether it was ADHD when I was like 23 or 24, or whether it was generalized anxiety disorder on top of the bipolar diagnosis at the same time I was diagnosed with that, or whether it was having social anxiety all of my childhood, or whatever other challenge I had, or being homicidally and suicidally depressed simultaneously. Like, all of these things, they were just little ripples in the pond that made me maybe feel a little down for a while. But at the end of the day, I always had the intuitive sense that I can fucking do this shit. And I'm worth some fucking great shit. I mean, really, probably around like age 4 or 5, if I had to guess. Maybe it was more like 6 or 7. I don't know the exact age. I just had this intuition. And I knew that I was like really, really, really powerful or important. It was just this feeling. And maybe this isn't a real thing. Maybe this isn't an accurate thing. Maybe this was some ego reaction of a child due to the conditions of my life. It's very likely that that could be the case. Or maybe it was some intuition of some spiritual truth or past life thing. It doesn't matter. I don't really care about distinguishing that kind of stuff these days. What I care about is what is here, what is now, and making it better. And part of making that better is expressing myself when I feel like expressing myself, and expressing myself in ways that will hopefully help other people. It will hopefully transmit something of value that they can use. So this whole shebang of me talking about a lot of it being my personal shit and meshing it in with sort of spiritual teachings that aren't completely exact or precise or giving you some clear methodology of what to do. This is all really just to try to make my experience better. How's it making my experience better right now? I just felt like making a video, so I started making a video. And I felt like making this exact video, and I just was making the video. That's what the character, Brandon Rowe, the avatar, the self-illusion potential thing, it has potential to be a self-illusion, right? Or at least it used to be for me. And maybe depending on how advanced you are, maybe you'd say I'm still in self-delusion. It doesn't matter. My point is, I just felt like doing this shit. But I also feel like it could be beneficial to another person. And this is just my process, my way of making my moment, my direct experience, more enjoyable. Videos have a sort of spiritual element to me in which, yeah, my life is already pretty damn flowy, flow statey, positive. Everything's pretty effortless and beautiful, and there's very little to no resistance in most moments. Even with intense physical pain. I mean, I enjoy the pain a lot of the time. But actually, one of my most popular videos on my YouTube channel over 8 years is how to enjoy pain. It's funny that the video got more views then when I knew nothing about it or how to do it. I was just parroting someone else's idea. Again, I'm really good at throwing tangents at you guys. I recognize. That's just kind of how my mind works. I have ADHD, like I said. Yeah, I'm just having a fucking ball making this video. It's a good fucking time. And if it helps anyone else out, then that's a bonus, right? Ultimately, it is a purpose of making this video is for somebody else to see it and react to it. Or at least the appearance of another person to appear to see it and appear to react to it and appear to get something beneficial out of it, or appear to get some entertainment value out of it, or appear to strengthen their own opinion and say I'm all fucking wrong, and somehow that makes their life better. because they stood up for their own ideas and stuff and then found their own path to their own truth, their own thing that works for them. Everybody's going to have a different path out of suffering. And if you think that insight is not related to reducing suffering, I would say that you probably haven't experienced directly the capacity that a human being has to reduce suffering in their life. Do you think really, with your logical mind, with your intuitive mind, with your heart, your soul, emotions, any of it, all of it, do you really fucking think that someone who is in intense suffering all the time is going to be better poised to actually awaken then? Or someone who has the same desire and drive to awaken and the same belief that they can, but is in a state of bliss and ecstasy and is in a natural flow with the course of all the causes and conditions and creations that may be there or may not be there. They are at the pinnacle of their experience to that point. They are in intense satisfaction and ultimately love. Satisfaction, or rather the opposite of dissatisfaction, which is really just another word for suffering. When I say suffering, I really do a lot of the time really more mean dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction is a kind of a more precise word. You're either satisfied, you're either fucking fully satisfied, in love with what the hell's happening right now, or you're not. And this could be one way of saying you're either in jhana or you're not. Is one way of thinking of it. You're either in samadhi or you're not. You're either in love with existence and the flow that's occurring or you're not. You're either in resistance or you're with it. My point is, get with it. Do the shit like I'm doing. It looks fucking weird. Maybe nobody gives a shit about it. It doesn't matter. I'm enjoying myself. And I'm trying to help other people while I'm doing it. And maybe I'm not the most effective spiritual teacher on the planet. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm somewhere in the middle. Who cares? I'm living life. And that's all there is to it, man. So, 17 minutes of your life you've spent watching this, potentially. If you enjoyed it, give this a like for the algorithm. Help Brandon Rowe get to 1,500 subs. And if I get there, I'll make a much higher quality video than this that will hopefully help out a lot more people. I promise. I'll keep that in mind and I'll remember. And if I forget, remind me and I'll drop one hell of a video.